Johnny Rock Page, I don't know if there's a word to describe him.
Johnny Rock Page is wild.
Johnny Rock Page is courageous.
Johnny Rock Page has guts.
My dad likes to go fast.
200 miles an hour on 2 wheels.
He's determined.
Johnny's out there.
Eccentric.
The most narcissistic person I have ever met.
Johnny gets what he wants.
You can't take away the fact that he built a multi-million-dollar company purely because somebody told him he couldn't.
My dad is insane.
But that's why I love him.
Go do whatever it is that you want to go do. I promise confidence will follow. Am I going to go be a racer and go after this because it's going to haunt me if I don't do it? The dream of becoming a superbike racer has always been inside of me. I live by the motto, dream big, anything is possible.
He is not your typical bike racer. He's an athlete that wears many hats. He is a motivational speaker, a businessman.
Johnny Rock Page, AMA Pro Motorbike Racer.
Number 269. I'm an entrepreneur, a superbike racer, a family man.
My dad always takes risks, so he's pretty much not scared to do anything.
Spend your entire life chasing your dreams, and you can't go wrong.
Hey! It's amazing. If you just reach out and be nice to fans, they want to make a connection with superbike racers, and you can inspire them and take that 30 seconds. It has nothing to do with how I place. It has everything to do with, you know, how I can make a connection with fans and motivate people. So I have found my biggest passion is to motivate people and inspire people. And before the race starts, I truly believe that I've already won.
You're fun to watch.
Hey, as long as my daughters think so, that's all I really care about, right? I've lived an intense and exciting life.
My dad is cuckoo crazy.
We're just people who have learned to push themselves at an extreme level. You know, racing chose me. I didn't choose racing. I'm going to represent all the people, and I'm going to show that the person in the back of the pack can do something. You know, no matter what happens with my race career, I will know that I've motivated a lot of people because of this simple message that says, dream big, anything is possible. I was born in Douglas, Arizona, which is a small town, about 10,000 people back then, in 1968. My dad's name is Robert Henry Page, and my mother is Eloisa Lariva. I had a little brother named Bobby, and I had an older brother named Curtis, and I used to call him Chopper. My mother had what you call paranoia schizophrenia. Everybody tried to get her on medication, and they weren't successful doing that. And so she became unrelatable to people. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old when they got divorced. As a child, I just remember always not really knowing where home was. She had an episode with her boyfriend one time, and it was really bad. She got so angry and just threw the worst fit of rage that the cops came over. She got really violent with the cops, and she wrestled with the ambulance people, and she got pinned down. They put her in a white straitjacket, and it freaked me out. That is the most terrifying thing I think you could see as a child, is watching your mother get taken away in a straitjacket, because you're like, what's gonna happen with my life? When we got with my dad, it was super stable compared to my mother. My dad, he was making money, he had a stable job, he had friends, he was so loved by so many people. So we went from a completely unstable environment to what seemed like a super stable environment. I wasn't good at school because I was so dismantled from the system. My mother always taught me, defend yourself. You cuss out your teacher, you chew him out, and you don't take anything from anybody. But my mom would come to the school, and rather than being reasonable and trying to scold me, which she probably should have done, discipline me for talking back to my teacher, she would chew out the teacher. I was really inspired by the sound of a cello, and I got in a music class, and then I got kicked out because I was obnoxious. I remember that I was so disobedient, they actually took a refrigerator box, put a desk in it, cut out a hole on the side and created a door, and then cut out the top of it. And I spent half of a year in a refrigerator box and was only allowed out during recess. I just remember always wanting to get out of that box. My dad's always been my hero, you know, because of the way he treated me. He was amazing. He would love me through it. He would never make me feel like there was something wrong with me. My dad had a practice. He was an emergency room doctor. I was like a shadow, you know. My dad, if he was going to the emergency room, I was going to the emergency room, and I'd sit in the cafeteria and eat ice cream sandwiches. If he was going golfing, I was going golfing. Matter of fact, I wanted to be a good golfer just so my dad would be proud of me. My dad would challenge me with little things, you know. I'd be like, hey, I need some money to go to a movie. And he'd be like, well? He goes, how are you gonna make some money? And I go, I don't know. And he goes, well, he'd say, I'll match anything you save. And I'm like, huh, this sounds like I could try to impress my dad. So I'm like, okay. I said, Dad, I need about $500. I said, I'll borrow it and I'll pay you back. I went and bought a green machine, 5.0 horsepower green machine, a weed eater, an edger, all the car wash details you could possibly buy. I was like the little lawn boy running around detailing every car and mowing every lawn in the neighborhood. And I was making money in 5th grade. At 13 years old, I could go to the movies, I could buy clothes. I remember buying a Koss Cruiser. It was like an oversized, you know, BMX bike. You know, today I still have that cool bike.
Our freshman year, we went out to practice golf, not with each other, but we met each other out there, and it's like, hey, you're John Page, you're Tom Davis. And since then, we've been best friends.
When I was 14 and a half, I bought a 1976 Triumph Spitfire convertible. I wasn't even 16 yet. I made a $5,000 land investment, and another $2,500, I just saved it.
We grew up always competing with each other. Hey, okay, you know, let's see, you know, where we can go with this this month.
I had a job at Dimension Cable. I lied about my age. I told him I was 18, and I was top salesman.
He could say, you know what, Tom, I'm gonna get 51 sales. My record's 48 for the week. You have 47, you're never gonna beat me. I'm doing 51, and he'd stamp it on the side of his desk wall. This was when we were 16 years old, and I'd look at that and I'd be like, 52, you know, and then an hour later, he'd have 53 on there.
You know, 16 years old, I'm making like $500, $600, $700, $800 a week. You know, which was a lot of money back then.
And Johnny, he dragged me into that.
I just could never get interested in school.
We got the same grades. We tried as hard as we could. It was not good for us to be in the same class because we sat next to each other, made each other laugh all day.
I'd hang out with the stoners. I'd hang out with the jocks. I'd hang out with the cool dudes. I'd hang out with the teachers. I really didn't have one set of friends that I hung out with. I kind of hung out with everybody. I tried to go to college, and it just wasn't interesting to me. You know, I went to ASU, and I joined this business fraternity. I thought, okay, I'll join a business fraternity, and Theta Delta Chi. These guys were disgusting. They sit there and fart, burp, drink alcohol, and I was like, these guys aren't serious about life. These guys are a bunch of losers.
Johnny had a love for bikes probably at age 18 when he could afford to buy his first bike. It was a Honda Hurricane 87.
I felt so cool having a motorcycle at 18 years old in high school. That was pretty awesome. There was this place in Tempe at that time called Dick's Drive-In. There was this one girl who started taunting me and this guy to race. And then she goes, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. We were going about 110, 120, and then we passed this car. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was a cop. If I take off, I have a chance to get away. And if I pull over, I'm definitely losing my license. At 8 points, I'm done. I turned right down this road and I go through this alley and there's this big dumpster. So I put my bike next to the dumpster, looked in the dumpster, there happened to be this huge tarp. And I threw the tarp over the bike, and then I saw a dog across the road. I took my shoes off, rolled my pants up, took my shirt off, threw it in the garbage, and I ran out there, grabbed this dog, it looked like old Yeller. I sat there just kicking back, and then the cop starts going back and forth.
And he said, hey, I'm over here at campus ASU. I was racing somebody, 5-0. followed me. I avoided him.
Look, can you come get me? I'm too afraid.
And I was like, okay, cool. So I brought the truck. I went and got Johnny's truck at his house, and we did it. We pulled it off.
I went to get, some service done at this place called Valley Yamaha in Tempe, Arizona. And there was this guy, Cliff Stovall, who was the mechanic. I saw on the wall this picture of number 7, Eddie Lawson, and I was just like, it looked like poetry in motion. This guy was dragging his knee in the corner.
I think he morphed. He had an epiphany.
This just pierced my heart and soul. I'm like, that looks amazing.
When he avoided the cops and I got him that night, I saw it. I saw the fire in his eye. It was it. He was on.
Cliff says, I used to ride with that guy on the track. I'm like, really? I'm like, wow, I would love to try that. He gave me some things to think about, and he said, come back at 9 in the morning on Monday. I was there at 8:30. And he gets in at 9, and he's just smiling because he sees me waiting there by the door when he walked in. He's like, we're going racing, aren't we? He goes, yep. I said, we sure are.
And he was really good. Like, we'd go to Firebird, and he was hitting his knee already at age 18.
Craig Kessler was like one of the top-plated guys on the scene. He was an expert. That weekend, they put these novice shirts on the beginners. They make you wear an orange shirt, I think, back then. And then they make you start 15 seconds later after the experts. I caught up to the experts. And then Craig Kessler, I'm right on his butt. And then I'm about to pass, and I'm taking him over. I mean, I'm catching him fast. He wads it up and crashes, and then I just check out. I'm gone. And I took first place that weekend in my first race weekend ever as an amateur novice. The headlines said, Johnny Rock Page embarrasses the experts at Firebird Raceway. I broke into like the 110s, which was like right near the track record. I'm sure there's some racers out there, Rossi or Spees or somebody's got some incredible stories like that, but I've never heard of anybody, beating everybody on the track their first race weekend. I liked racing. It was just a blast. I finally discovered something that I was really good at aside from business. My amateur year, I accumulated enough points where I qualified for pole position in the middleweight supersport class at Daytona. I think I was 15, 20 seconds ahead of second place. When I crossed that finish line and got that checkered flag and everybody was behind me, I burst into tears and I was like, yeah! 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 I did it! I won Daytona! I won Daytona! And I was just like, I never knew I had this in me. As fast as it happened, I got derailed as fast as it happened too because I ran out of that money.
Johnny's always been one to have a girlfriend, The next day after breaking up with one, boom, got the next.
There was this girl, Lori. It was a New Year's Day party. There was this lady, Aggie. She grabs my arm and she goes, oh my gosh. I'm like, lady, you're being weird. What's going on? And she goes, you'd be perfect for my daughter.
She said, you guys should come over here. I think you'd have fun. There's a lot of people your age. There's some cute guys over here.
So I'm out in the garage playing darts with my friend Tom Davis. Lori comes up with this girl named Heather, and I looked at Lori and I was just like, oh my gosh. This girl had milk, creamy skin. She was absolutely a stunner.
He was a ladies' man. It's cool. But when he met Lori, that was done.
I told Tom within 5 minutes of meeting her, I said, I'll bet you I end up marrying this girl. I just was so attracted to her.
So then he had asked me to go to the movie. My friend didn't want to go, so we had dropped her off. And then we went to the movie and he's like, oh yeah, I don't have any money, so I paid for the first date. I thought he was really cute. I thought he was really nice. Like, he was really friendly. He was funny. He had like a childlike sense about him. We would fight about silly things, jealousy and, insecurities on both of our sides.
I'd get mad, she'd walk home. Her dad was constantly telling her, this guy doesn't have a degree, he does Amway, this guy's never gonna make any money, you shouldn't be with him, but she was like, I'd love him, he's sweet. And I loved her. I was about 24, 25, and she was 20.
We were like inseparable. We were talking about marriage and stuff, and he said, well, I would marry you. And I said, well, I would marry you too.
And I go, wait a minute. Are we getting engaged right now? And she's like, I think we are. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And we both burst into tears. It was the most innocent, loving moment. We got engaged accidentally because we talked about love for the first time, and neither one of us, we had no ceiling on it. I got this necklace that I was wearing, and I immediately broke a piece of it off and then made it into a ring. And I gave her this little ring that was our engagement ring until I could get her a real ring.
And I remember going home and telling my mom and my stepdad that we were gonna get married, and I think they were a little scared. I just had a feeling that he was driven and it would all work out.
I went and bought this incredible ring for like $5,000, and at Ruth's Chris one night, I gave her that ring in front of her family, and she just turned 21. It was on her 21st birthday, actually.
He always was good at making money.
I would buy a car, use the same ad, turn around and sell it.
His niche was Honda Accords, and he knew everything about them.
I was making like $100,000 a year buying and selling cars. It was 1995, and this guy, Gino Cardenas, was living out of his car, but we'd worked together at RCI Axiom 3, and he knew that I was a top salesman.
Gino was another good goal-oriented entrepreneur, and he asked me for Johnny's number to call for an idea.
Gino said, look, there's this company in Oregon called CCS Express, and they are getting into the ATM industry. So Gino says, look, we'll split it 50-50, but I gotta live with you.
And he would sleep on the couch, and I remember it would annoy me because I was like, God, this guy's always on our couch, and it's just weird.
So he got Johnny to invest in some money with it, and they became partners, and for 3 or 4 years grew CGI Incorporated.
They started CGI out of our house, our 3-bedroom house.
We were the first dealers ever in Arizona. Nobody had sold an ATM in Arizona.
And I was like, well, I don't know. I'm like, why would people need cash when they can just pay with their card? You know, I didn't grasp the idea of it.
I'd figured out that the ATM business was my residual, and I could get time and money if I put 1,000 ATMs out there. I already calculated how much I could make, and then I said I could go racing on my own terms and not need sponsors.
Whatever Johnny's into, he's into 100%. And everything else just kind of fades away.
And Johnny did have a tough time, you know, making that first sale.
1 month would go by, no sales. 2 months would go by, no sales.
He lived at that company, and he worked and I was always alone.
Everybody kept on asking me, where's the closest ATM machine? And I'd always have to say, well, we don't have one yet.
The only game plan he knows is he knows what he wants, and then he goes out and gets it.
We went into this place called AMPM Arco, and we signed up 2 accounts, and then corporate AMPM Arco called and said, sorry, you can't put ATMs in. So we went from cloud 9 finally. We finally cracked our business after 6 months to all of a sudden dejected, and Gino quit.
I think his first sale was like one of the best accounts in the company, so he made up for it.
We ran to this place called N Food Market, and this Indian guy, super nice guy named Ken Patel, he says, okay, let me see what you got. And all of a sudden this guy walks up with contractor pants or Levi's on with paint all over and a grubby shirt, and he puts all this grub on the counter, looks in, grabs his wallet, and he goes, oh shoot. He says, do you know where the closest ATM is? And then Ken Patel looks over at me, he's like, he goes, yes, about 3 miles down that way. And he goes, okay, John, sign me up. I bought one of those Instamatic cameras, and I said, get over here and let's take a picture. And he goes, oh no, John, don't tell me I'm your first customer. And I said, yes, you are, but you're already signed up, so get in here.
The turn of millennium, that's when things were getting really heavy with internet marketing. So I came in, applied some of that to Johnny's business that he already had built.
You know, as I look back, I learned how important the dream is. I would have quit if I didn't have my eye on racing. 2 years later, we went nationwide.
CGI was doing good. I mean, not like it ended up being as big as it was, but at that time, money was never really an issue.
We all started with CGI because of Johnny. He brought all of us in there. We were all either friends of friends, family of family. Nobody worked there without knowing somebody there.
my first child, you know, Madison was born September 20th, 1997. And I go to the hospital, and this beautiful little baby was there. I had a hard time connecting still, you know, even though this was my child. Madison gave me the keys to go out. I'll say my selfish outlook on life was, hey, she's always involved in Madison. I'm gonna take off and go out and hang out with my friends.
I didn't sign up to be this stay-at-home mom with a baby by myself, you know? So that was a big shock for me.
I committed adultery a lot.
And we got into a lot of fights, and our relationship from then on was, from what I remember, not good. When Madison, I think, was about 1, he started dabbling into the racing again. Part of the reason was because he had the money, because he was making money at CGI, so he wanted to get back into that. And then I remember we started talking about having a second child. I didn't want Madison to be alone.
Alexa was born on September 25th, 1999.
That night, he said, I have to get this car back to California. And he left, and the next day, I'm like, where is he? And I was calling, and he wasn't answering.
You know, I'm caught up in the lustful life.
So finally, I got a hold of him, like, hours later. It was like the afternoon. And I'm like, where are you? And it was really windy. I remember hearing the wind on the phone. And he said, oh, I'm out on my friend's yacht sailing. And I wanted to kill him. And I remember I would get upset with him when I would take videos of the girls, and it was like immediately I had the camera on and he would be in there with the girls. And I was always like getting frustrated. I'm like, you're never here, but you're gonna be in every baby video, and they're not gonna believe me, you know? I just always tried to keep it kind of a secret how bad everything was, but I lost it.
I was one of those characters that had love and lust so compartmentalized wrong that I just wanted to keep on feeling love. And love through the body was the only way I could feel love. And if Lori and I would fight, I'd go get love somewhere else.
The thing about Johnny was when I decided to marry him, he was all into me. He was into me. He treated me like a queen. He would pick flowers every morning when we were dating and put them in my car. And that guy disappeared.
We'd have jacuzzi parties and pool parties, have couples over, and then, you know, I met this guy named Mike Rasmussen, and then his wife walks in with this yellow dress on, and I'm like, whoa. I hadn't got, you know, shook up like this since Lori. This girl, Ladina, was just absolutely stunning. When Mike talked to me, we were in the pool, and I heated the pool, and he says, hey, would you and Lori ever be open to, you know, maybe some, you know, swapping or something to spice up the relationship?
He would tell me I wasn't any fun, that I never wanted to go on these trips, and I'm like, I can't leave an infant and a 2-year-old for a week, and, you know, I wasn't okay with that.
And then I said, hey, Mike, Lori's not interested, but man, I'm really interested. You know, I want to keep on exploring life, you know? And so he's like, okay, well, we'll pretend we're going dirt bike riding and we'll go to Vegas. I completely tuned him out. I was just into his wife. Ladina was never supposed to kiss me. And, you know, and she was kissing me all the time. Ladina brought out the excited Johnny again. We started becoming inseparable because we had really good moments together. And we were sneaking off together at the time.
We got divorced because I found out he was having an affair.
The transition from Lori to Ladina was tough on Johnny and I. Our friendship, like, you know, went to a halt.
He has a really good side and a really selfish side. I wouldn't say he's a bad person. I would just say he gets caught up in what he wants, and that's the most important thing.
I could tell it was over, so, you know, it was obvious.
I actually think I dealt with it okay because I thought that always there was something wrong with Johnny a little bit, and I didn't take it as personally, maybe if I would have been dealing with somebody completely sane.
In the back of my heart, I was like, oh my gosh, I just totally walked away from my 2 beautiful little kids and my wife, but Lori didn't like my racing.
At that point, his company was really strong. So, you know, I could see him wanting to get back into racing.
I went to the dealership one time, I bought this R1, it was a 2004 R1, and I go and get new tires put on it, and there's this big guy, you know, 6'4" Taylor, he's about 240 pounds, a big Opie Taylor looking type dude, you know? And he's like, hey, you're Johnny Rock Page. I'm like, yeah? And he goes, you were really good at racing. Do you still want to race? And I go, oh, I'm not eligible anymore. Taylor walks up and he's got this FedEx package. He goes, hey, your credentials are good. But here's the problem. There's a track day in 2 weeks. Laguna Seca is in 3 weeks. If you don't qualify, you go past your marker and you go back to a novice.
Johnny called me at 7:30 on a Wednesday night and said, the general manager at the time has stepped down and resigned, and I need you to take over.
And I said, Ladina, what do you think about me going racing? She goes, oh, I would love to see you go racing. I'm like, dun 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 dun. And then I went up to Laguna Seca, 3 weeks later. This is my childhood dream we're talking about. So everything's on the line here. Come back in. I'm like, how'd I do? Did I go a second faster? Did I go a second faster? And Ladina's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, oh, and I'm just dejected. She goes, you went 2. I'm like, yeah, 2 seconds. I got my membership. I was back in. My credentials were good. I was a pro racer, and I made it. And now I'm really excited. I got residual income. I got a new chick. I'm fired up. I went and did the warm-up lap, and then I get down on my knee. I pull my boot off, and then I grab the ring out, and I proposed to her right there, and I show the ring to the crowd, like gladiator, show it to the crowd, and then give it to her, and she says yes, and she cries, and it's great. And I throw my helmet on, and I go and had a great race. Right or wrong, we started trying to have a baby immediately after we got engaged. The wedding we decided to have in our backyard, and we had this beautiful desert landscaping that backed up to South Mountain. Here I am at Daytona. It was 2005, and my hero, number 17, just passed me, and it was Miguel Duhamel. Right when he passed me, I wiped out bad. It was like on the 41st or 42nd lap. I was coming off the high bank, going about 150, 160 miles per hour, and the front of the bike, I noticed it was having problems, and this time it just tucked on me. The road was like sandpaper. I just slid, and I got up, but I knew something was wrong with me because I felt really funny in my whole body. I think it was just a little shock. I had busted open my knee and my shoulders, my hands, my elbows, my hips. I was a mess. I'm 36 years old, I think, about at the time, and everybody's like, why are you racing? And I'm like, man, it's unfinished business. I went out there and won Daytona at 20 years old as an amateur, and I always said that I was going to build my ATM business so that I could build that residual income, and I signed up 1,000 accounts on purpose so that I could walk away from it. Madison Lexon, they're looking at me funny, and I'm like, it's okay, we're going to continue racing. I'm going to continue on. I wanted to complete a whole season. We were going to have Kennedy, and so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to race. It was exciting. I got to watch, Kennedy not only be born, I got to deliver her myself. That was a really beautiful experience, She was always super supportive. She was excited to get that Umbrella Girl outfit on and look good. And then it just got to the point where I didn't need just one Umbrella Girl. I would get 2, then 3. I had a montage of Umbrella Girls. I had this beautiful wife, but I wanted more and more and more. I was always pushing the limit. I wanted to know how far you could take it. I didn't know my boundaries. I remember I watched the CNN 2-hour episode on ecstasy. I was kind of scared to try a drug. I've never tried a drug, and whoa. I would just give them to people. Like, instead of people coming over and drinking liquor or smoking pot, they would just come over and take ecstasy.
First time I ever did ecstasy was with Johnny, right? He offered it to me. I remember he snuck me up to his room at one of his parties, and he moves this thing over and he goes, hey dude, do this with me tonight.
The parties were pretty crazy. There was a lot of drugs going on there.
I wanted to try it because I wanted to see what he was seeing. I wanted to see the party in his eyes.
They would come over Friday and leave Sunday, and it got to the point where we just started feeling so deeply connected with so many people.
The extravagant parties we had were crazy. Who has 3-day parties?
Many parties that they had that I was invited to, I ran those parties.
He was a hedonist. That's totally kind of how he was.
I honestly felt like I was on crazy pills. Like I was the only one to be like,
what? Do you know how screwed up this guy is?
Ladina and I would get home at 10 or 11 at night, and there'd be 15 people in her backyard swimming. And we were just like, oh, cool, everybody's here. And
it was like, oh, I'm not gonna hang out with this guy again. I don't want to be around this, you know? But then it was impossible because he was like, hey, I'm having a few friends over, you know, come on over. And it'd be gorgeous, beautiful people.
Non-stop alcohol, naked women everywhere, drugs flying everywhere, people sleeping in rooms.
There was like thousands of people at my house. We had like an alcohol bar. I just remember being around all that chaos.
The girls, when they were with Johnny and Lydia, they would call me, and it would be late at night, and they would be stressed out, and I could hear music and parties and people, and
it was just hectic living in.
I didn't know what was going on. So I felt really out of control with my kids being over there, but didn't really know what to do about it.
I'm sure a lot of people were looking at us just like, wow, these guys are wild, you know? I mean, imagine when you're, doing ecstasy, you're drinking alcohol, and your serotonin level's going up and down, and you can't figure out what's going on.
I had a feeling that stuff was going on, but I always kind of felt at that time that he had at least good judgment with the girls and he wouldn't let anything bad happen to them.
Do I promote it? Absolutely not. However, you're talking about somebody who got lucky and experienced it and got out of it. So I've got this friend of mine, Eric Crown. This guy, built Insight.
One day down the street comes a guy in a fast race car. Turns out to be Johnny Rock. He turns out I'd moved into the neighborhood and he was my new neighbor.
He had jets and all sorts of toys and just this rock star, this fun life.
It was a wild and woolly time for both of us. I had just retired from business and Johnny was in the throes of growing his business.
We've always stuck with each other through thick or thin and our different experiences.
One of my investments has been Lifestyle Magazine. We're a regional lifestyle magazine, in, I guess, a dozen cities around the United States, catering to the 21 to 35, kind of go out and be seen crowd.
I want to do something for him because once you have a lot of money, everybody's always wanting to get money from you. And so to keep our friendship in line, I just went and did all this stuff for him.
Johnny started putting on the 944 logo onto his apparel and started racing around. Before you knew it, we had a tour bus and every other thing with our logo on it.
Eric was just overwhelmed at the gesture that I went and did that.
We'd run down to Laguna Seca and watch Johnny race. It's interesting, something I probably would never do, but God bless him if he's willing to go that fast on those bikes. I love the fact he's going after his dream. At his age, go ahead and decide he wants to go 100 and something miles an hour around the track. That's pretty amazing.
I went to Daytona Nationals, and as an expert, I entered like 3 or 4 national races.
He started when he was like 35 years old, and how many 35-year-olds are racing now?
He has no other gear. It's either pedal to the metal or don't give a damn. There's no other gear. And it shows up in his racing.
I was coming home in a body bag, or I was winning that race. When I crossed that finish line, I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah! I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! I'm like, whoa! And I just burst into tears. And I was like, wow! I was just like, it was incredible. When I graced the stage when I was like 20 years old, it was about me. When I graced the stage at 15, 16 years later, it was about my children. It was about them seeing Dad crippled in bed for 3 months after crashing Daytona, not being able to move, and having the deep, conviction to get back up and keep trying. I was so excited, and I remember her looking at me. She had this deep, concerned look when I was sitting there smiling and just happy as could be. And she knew something right there. I think she knew that our relationship was in trouble. She was right. Racing, everything became about racing. The AMA told me that I was eligible to try out for Superbike. Well, Superbike is the top grid. That's like where the Michael Jordans hang out of racing. I'm thinking, maybe I could pull this off.
There's no way he's gonna qualify. This guy doesn't practice.
I'm at Fontana Raceway, and I looked at the timer, and I just kept missing it by like 1/10 of a second. I'm like, oh! And I'm like exhausted. I'm in good shape, and I'm exhausted, and I kept missing it. And I pull in the grid, and I'm like, guys, I was so close and I couldn't do it. I was just like, oh man, I've never been so close. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you're in. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm in? I'm like, no, I missed it. I see my laptop. I'm like, no, dude, you're in. And so I jump over the board and I look at I don't believe him, and all of a sudden I see the line drawn and my name's above the line by like a tenth of a second. I'm like, what? I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And I'm a Superbike racer. I mean, come on. This is crazy. My life finally made sense, you know? That was crazy. I was wasting a lot of money. Everybody thought I was nuts, including myself. And I'm like, wow, I just made the Superbike grid. Jason DeSalvo gave me a thumbs up, and I didn't feel like I belonged, but all of a sudden I'm like, you know, I'm on the grid. This is cool. It was probably one of the most amazing moments of my life, you know, outside of my kids being born and getting married and all the fun times. And, you know, a billionaire couldn't buy what I was gracing the stage on, you know?
How does this man at his age, who never practices, just show up and qualify with these people of a whole higher level? But Johnny does.
All right, Johnny Rock Page is about to head out in a little bit for his very first AMA Superbike race.
Yes, my first AMA Superbike race. I made the grid by 1/10. That's really what I love about our sport. You know, Rossi, Pedrosa, you know, all the superstars, you know, even Lorenzo. I've met all the guys, and we all have a kindred spirit, you know? No matter if we get along or not, you know, even though I get along with most of them, we all throw it on the line, and you could die racing, and no matter who's first or last, we're all part of that family. And so once I made the Superbike grid and I felt like I belonged, wow, did the media explode around me.
Saw him racing on the weekend, and my son was young, you know, like 8, 9 years old, and we were watching Johnny Rock Page on Sunday afternoon, and he's like, oh, cool, because TJ was like, I know him.
Wow, this is real. There's 80,000 people here, and Johnny's a part of the main event for the greatest riders in the country. He does the first practice lap, and I'm sitting in, you know, the pits, and he comes out, and he gets off. I'll never forget this moment. He takes off his helmet, and he looks at me with that Johnny Rock Page grin, and he goes, so what'd you think? Like a 16-year-old kid who just drove around the car for the first time, like it was no big deal. And I was like, you're insane. I don't know how you do that.
It's inspiring, like how many people don't go to college and end up making a fantastic living that most people that go to college would be like craving to have.
His ATM industry business really funded everything else.
He had people running his business for him, so he had tons of free time. And, you know, to me, that's probably where things went wrong.
Eric Crown flew us out in his private jet, and we went out to Las Vegas, and I remember just, you know, slushing around in the crowd, and then there was this guy with a London accent.
I met Johnny Rock Page in Las Vegas at my Planet Perfecta residency.
He bought me a drink, and then I bought him a drink. I just thought he had a really cool, you know, London accent, and he goes, I told him about Superbike racing. He doesn't know anything about Superbike racing, and then he told me about DJing.
I was not familiar with what he did and who he was, and vice versa.
I invited him to a race, and that night, when I met him, he invited me to come to some place where he was performing.
And I think that's where why our friendship developed, because we didn't want anything from one another.
We went there, and I was just kind of like, hey, I'm here to see Paul Oakenfold, and you know, the security takes me right up to this guy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's thousands of people. They got lighters on everywhere. I'm like, who the heck did I meet here, you know? Who is this guy?
Came into my world, came to my show, and
pulls me right up on stage with like 10, 15 people. The security guy made everybody get off on stage, so I'm like, hey, Paul, it was good meeting you. I got to get off stage, and so I walked off, and he's like, get back up here. So everybody else, he kicked off, and I got to stay with him. So he made me feel so special, you know, and I just met the guy. And then after that, he grabbed my hand, and then we went and partied together. And boy, did we party. Paul and I became good friends, you know, and Paul decided to come out to Laguna Seca one year.
I've never really attended a race like that, so it was quite overwhelming when you see like 75,000 people there and go to that kind of event, and he obviously took care of us. It was very nice of him.
And he brought Jason Statham. It was like crazy. There was a DJ and a superbike racer and a actor, you know, a famous actor who's sitting there giving autographs. I mean, we're all signing autographs. It was the funniest thing. I got this TV show going, you know, about that time the Kardashians were getting theirs going. I had a beautiful, stunning wife. I had gorgeous, funny, very eccentric kids. I was the guy who paid to race. I didn't get paid to race. I would get leftover bikes from any team that would sell me these bikes.
And this was a person that we all supported. This was a person that no matter what your position was, if Johnny needed something, he always went to me.
We had all the dynamics of, you know, a dysfunctional family.
When I met Johnny, the biggest thing was he was just so fascinating to me.
I wanted everybody around me to be a part of this electricity and this excitement. I was trying to stir up as much trouble as I possibly could.
It was just all, how can I make my specific dot on this earth a little bit bigger?
I didn't know that reality shows were not real. I just paid 2 camera guys, bought these expensive cameras. We started working and building this show. We filmed our lives, whether we were skateboarding up and down the street or jumping a ride in the Ferrari or the Viper or the Porsche or the Hummer, playing in our incredible backyard pool, throwing parties, our crazy, wild drug life, party life, alcoholic life, over-the-top life, and all in every single direction. I was filming it, and the more chaotic it was, the better.
I was interested in what he was taking, you know, what he had in his system.
Even when I went on a bike ride, Johnny had cameras follow him, and it was all about Johnny. It was just the Johnny Show. Johnny Show, everywhere you went, Johnny Show. No matter what you did, it was the Johnny Show.
Because last year I set out to take my own money and invest in a reality show, actual real reality, and it's following around this old man trying to make the Superbike grid and takes you behind the scenes of what it's like trying to break into Hollywood. And I'm doing it for the love of the sport, but I need your help.
The more and more time I spent with Johnny Rock Page, I realized how, you know, ultimately selfish and narcissistic he was.
I know my heart was in the right direction. However, I'm sure it became overwhelming for, you know, those who just wanted me and didn't want this, you know, this rock star life.
Johnny Rock Page has gone crazy!
But I realized I had learned to cultivate a dream. And so, aside from my ego getting too big and crazy, I still had a very soft spot for the fans. I never would have made it as far as I made it in racing if it weren't for the fans. They would get energized when I would give them bracelets and autographs and meet them and stuff, but I would take their energy and be so excited to meet them also, you know?
Just want to let you guys know, we appreciate you guys a lot for coming out here. The sport would be nothing without you guys.
I was racing in mid-Ohio. I got into some trouble. That's a hard place to pass. And it's a really tight track. You're always just right, left, just constantly turning. And there's blue flags, you know, that wave, and I'm trying to secure a top 20 spot because that's what pays money.
Aaron's going to know there's 4 laps to go. Now they're getting up into traffic. You know, this is key. Josh is probably going to get by Johnny Rock right here on the inside. And, nope, he got closed off. So they're going to go into Thunder Valley trying to get by Johnny Rock Page here.
And they're waving a blue flag, but blue flag to me, at that time, it doesn't mean you move over and slow down. It just means that there's people coming up from behind you. And so the best thing you do as a racer, we don't have mirrors, is just keep racing your race and be predictable. And the best way you can be predictable is to hold your line and to keep racing the way you're racing.
That didn't help Hayes out at all. Oh boy, that didn't help either. Made it a little tough getting around him there. Now, Johnny Rock Page is going to get in between the two of them.
And so the race is over, and I'm all excited. The AMA comes up to me and they says, hey, your bike's being impounded or whatever. Freddie's following with the camera. I go, well, Freddie, stand back, you know, stand back. I don't know what's going on here, you know. Al Ludington, who's the director, he pulls me aside and he starts chewing me out. He says, "What are you doing? You're not part of the show." And I'm just like, I am too part of the show. I'm just as important as anybody. What are you talking about? I'm not part of the show. He goes, "You're not it, man." To me, if you qualify, you're part of that grid. I don't care if you're first place or if you're last place. You know, later on, the AMA told him to write me an apology letter, and then they were gonna fire him. Like, no, don't fire him. I go, just, you know, everybody learns things at different times. Just don't fire the guy. He's got a family. And I said, just, you know, tell him it was a little inappropriate, and everybody's just important.
Johnny and I went to New Jersey for one of Johnny's races, and
my bikes broke down. Some other guy is gonna loan me a bike, and then I met this guy, David Anthony.
You know, come asking for a bike. You got a bike to rent? And, you know, I had rented bikes out before, and you know, when you're racing, it's hard to make money and stay on top of things, so any bit of extra income's great. And so, yeah, my spare bike, I basically rented to Johnny, and that's where I met him.
This guy ended up being a superhero to me. You know, he got hurt from a previous race, you know, and he was gonna loan me his bike.
The day that Johnny rented my bike, it was definitely very interesting, because it just happened after Johnny got himself into a lot of controversy with AMA, and basically no one wanted him out there. You know, he wasn't doing anything for the sport at the time, and you know, honestly I felt the same too. I didn't really think that he was a great ambassador for the sport, and you know, why bother putting him out there? But at the end of the day was, you know, if I didn't rent him a bike, you know, I wasn't gonna eat that night. That's how tight things were back then.
He had special parts from factory on his bike, and they started robbing his parts, saying, "Look, we found out you're gonna let Johnny use your bike," and so they started dismantling and taking the special parts off.
But there were definitely consequences, because, you know, I kind of feel I have a bit of respect in the paddock, and everyone likes to help me out. And, you know, some people had lended me some stuff for the bikes, and as soon as they found out Johnny was riding one of my bikes, everyone wanted their stuff back.
The AMA and certain people didn't want me part of the association.
I don't think I ever said a word to him until I met him that day at New Jersey, but, you know, I thought, because there was always cameras following him, and obviously he had some money behind him, big fancy bikes and rigs and lots of girls getting around, you know, I kind of thought that he was a superstar. You know, he does think he's a superstar, but he is kind of nice about it. So, yeah, not too many people like him. I don't think too many people know Johnny for who he is. Yeah, he's crazy. I mean, no one's going to deny that. But he's actually a nice guy inside. But most people at track don't see that. They just see him getting out there, sometimes getting in the way. You know, he doesn't. It's amazing how good Johnny is on the track for how little he understands about racing, you know, how we all get along, what we do, respect for each other. You know, he doesn't really understand that. So I think that's, you know, a big part of why people don't really get along with him too well.
The first race, I raced and my bike's overheating. The short shifter's not working because they took off all these parts, and it's really difficult. I barely qualified. You know, on the cool-down lap, Larry Pegram, number 72, comes up, and he literally he goes on the outside and tries to take me out. And then I slam my brake on to the point where you know, the rear wheel just came off the ground. I hit the brake so hard, and he goes flying off the track. I mean, this guy tried to take me out.
This racer was so pissed at Johnny that he came after him in front of the whole crowd and in front of everybody.
We almost got in a fight with her. I go, "We can go at it right here if you want, man." I'm like, "What is your deal?" I go, "I was racing a race, dude, and you're yelling at me." At this point, it's like, I'm like, everybody's yelling at me. The AMA didn't know what to do with me. They're like, here's this guy, he's paying for his own racing, he's racing, he's a business guy, and he's making a TV show, and he's causing havoc. Good old Ben Bostrom, he goes, you know, later in the press, he's like, "I saw what happened." He goes, "Johnny didn't do anything wrong." As much as I'd like to say he did, he didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, good friend there. I lost my license.
He lost all hope. And they weren't going to let him race anymore. He was done. He was it. That was over. They didn't want him on the track. He caused too much trouble. It was it.
I was like kicked out of the sport that I love the sport. I was passionate about it. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, man, at least I got to race with all my superheroes, and I got to, you know, I never got to win a race at the Superbike level, and I think the best place that I ever gotten was like 12th. However, you know, I was excited that I was a Superbike racer at one point. I'm like, yeah, I was a Superbike racer. A lot of my friends, they missed that grid by 1/10 of a second on the left, and I made it. I was making residual income from my business. I'm committing adultery. You know, Ladina's not coming around. I'm cheating on her now. So she went and got a life of her own. I was like, well, where's my wife?
I remember it being super dysfunctional. Like, I was used to all the partying and stuff, but then it started to get like they were fighting all the time.
You're an unloyal person. No, I'm not. Yeah, you're very loyal. You cheat on Mike and you cheat on me.
I thought I fought with Johnny. I mean, the stories I heard about that, it was physical and insane and, you know, real violent.
Ladina didn't trust me, and, you know, I was kind of volatile.
I suggest that this does not get handled this way in front of the kids.
I have stuff right now that I need to get out of here. Kay has his backpack.
And when they would fight, they wouldn't be like most parents and try to hide it from their kids. They would slam doors and they would be yelling.
There was a switch. It seemed like he was nasty to her, belittling her.
It felt good to be secure, didn't it? It felt good to be secure, didn't it? It felt good to be secure. It means nothing. It meant nothing. It's your heart. I don't care about all the crap.
They would fight like no parent I have ever seen fight. And I remember me and Alexa, we went in our bathroom and brought food and pillows in there. We said, until Ladina leaves, we're not coming out of the bathroom.
There were times when they were fighting and it was getting really bad that he would call me to come and pick up the girls because he thought it was unhealthy. So I thought he still had some reasonable judgment, you know, as far as the girls were concerned.
Johnny won't ever physically and emotionally engage himself in anything unless he's about to lose it. Then it all of a sudden becomes important to him.
And then finally she was pretty much checked out. And I think when she was done, she was done.
I never imagined myself getting divorced from Ladina.
The one thing I will say about Johnny and stand by is that he means well. I think he just gets confused and caught up in the chaos of his mind.
So it took me a while to figure out that, oh my gosh, she's done with me. I became crazy.
I always wanted him to just find the right path. I always wanted him to start walking down this lidded path that I knew that he saw, because we got in many conversations about God.
I went to church, you know, on Christmas Eve, and this minister, Pastor Lynn, starts talking. He starts telling the story of Jesus. Lynn said, just tell the story of Jesus, how Jesus forgives. And I'm like, tell the story of Jesus. I go, gosh, I'd be the biggest hypocrite in the world. And he didn't know what a mess I was at the time, you know? This was my last chance, my last Christmas with the family that I loved this family, you know? It was a beautiful family. And so I'm feeling pretty demoralized as a man, but I'm like, I got nothing left to lose. I'm looking at the whole room, and I have so much love for everybody. And I've got so much forgiveness for everybody, and yet I needed forgiveness. I'm like, I've got adultery disgusted all throughout my life. You know, I just got kicked out of the AMA Superbike. I lost my credentials because they just couldn't deal with me anymore. I was over the top. My whole family was coming apart, you know. And I'm like, gosh, I already went through this once, you know, not again. And I got down on my knees and I'm like, and I started telling the story of how Jesus forgives. Kennedy was sitting right there and I'm like, you know, please forgive me, even though she's 3 years old. I'm like, for partying during your childhood, you know. And then Madison, I'm like, please forgive me for, you know, for not being a good dad in the ways that I was not a good dad. And Alexa, please forgive me. I just had tears coming out and, you know, I was feeling shame. And then, you know, I look at Ladina and I'm like, will you please forgive me? I yelled out to Jesus as loud as I possibly could. I'm like, Jesus, please save me and my family. Please save me and my family. And I yelled as loud as I could. And my heart was cut open. I mean, I was like, I was empty. I was broke. And I'm like, well, I don't get it, God. I'm like, I call on you and I don't get it. I'm like, I prayed to please save me and my family, and everybody walked out. I was so cut to the heart, and I believed everything that I was attached to, I'd lost. You know, it was all gone, every bit of it. And I spun out in life. I didn't know what to do anymore.
I had money coming in, but I had nothing that I didn't have anything left.
There was just this kid, this middle child who my heart went out to. I mean, ultimately it was like God tapped me on the shoulder. It was just like, forgive him, he doesn't know.
I remember saying, God, will you please show me what's going on? I don't understand my life.
After him and Ladina divorced, he kind of just seemed like he slipped into some kind of depression.
The transition was tough because, when I think that was it, man. When they were done, Johnny was going through so much. I didn't see him racing anymore.
I remember him calling me crying. I mean, just sobbing, crying. And thinking that maybe he got in an accident or something happened. He tells me that Ladina finally left him. And
she didn't want anything to do with him.
I remember dropping everything I was doing. Got in my car, and I spent 7 days and 7 nights at Johnny's house.
She left and didn't want him to see his daughter with her.
I was just there for him. I listened to him, and not a lot of people would listen to Johnny.
What are my rights?
Both of you have legal rights to the child.
Yeah, but she's just trying to manhandle and take her without even I don't want her to, and she is.
He couldn't fix this. He would keep going back to court and keep spending more money. I mean, I don't even know what his attorney bills were, but I know he had spent probably hundreds of thousands of dollars on attorneys trying to see Kennedy and get this situation fixed.
He did a very poor job of balancing his drive and his obsession and his passion and not ultimately being able to still be a friend and be a father and be a husband.
So after that, I saw a real decline in his personality. Like, he had kind of lost faith in his ability to have a relationship.
But he always had that little ray of light in him that showed hope. Like there's something there that could come back and be this great father and this great friend and somebody that will stick by your side when you're going through downtimes.
When it comes down to it, I think he's got a really good heart. I think he loves his kids unconditionally. I just think that there's too much background noise going on in his mind, you know?
I was still feeding my emptiness, but I was willing to always have fun. Phoenix Fashion Week was this time going to be held at the W.
We were kind of going backstage and just kind of checking out everything.
I kept noticing this brunette who was doing the fashion show, and I'm like, this girl just struck me funny.
We went to this restaurant bar afterwards where they were doing like an after party thing there, and she ends up coming in and Johnny draws her over. And
it was Marlo. I didn't know her name at the time, and I go, hey. She's like, I just stopped her in her tracks. She's like, yeah. And I go, can I buy you a drink?
And I remember thinking, I've seen this girl before. I know this girl. This is no different than the girl at the club looking for the rich man.
She was a change for me, you know?
There was a big age difference.
She was kind of in the dumps, going through, difficult times, and so was I. It was a unique relationship for me. This girl forced me to just be friends. It was the first time that I had not had sex with somebody who I was hanging out with a lot.
And finally, he snapped out of it. He started coming back. And you knew he was starting to come back because he started getting real creative.
I believe that age 44, 45, 46 for a human being is scientifically where you make big changes.
Like, he started looking internally a lot more.
Johnny's had the love of Jesus all of his life. He just was living an agnostic life.
I never knew the God to fear. I always just knew the God that's really sweet and forgiving and full of grace, and you party, you do everything wrong, and then you get forgiven because you're perfect and you never do wrong, And then I met this super awesome girl, Brittany Bell. I just liked her. She was a real sweet type of spirit. Brittany lived in California. And so I called her when I was down there. I'm like, hey, Brittany, you gonna be around? I said, let's go do something, go to a movie or something. And she's like, yeah, sure, but I've got to go to a Bible study first. I said, well, I'll go to the Bible study. And she's like, you love God? And I go, yeah, I love God. It was different, First of all, they loved God, but they really feared God. I met this guy, Victor Gonzalez. This guy just shoots straight at me and just boom, boom, boom. He just asked me questions. I'm like, look, you're a nice guy, but I pray Jesus in my heart, so I'm good, He's like, yeah, but look at your life. And I'm like, what about my life? And I'm like, I'm already saved, bro. I'm already with God. And he's like, well, you got to get baptized. And I'm like, well, according to who? This voice started coming into my head. And then I said, God told me to get baptized. Victor's like, what? And I'm like, look, I got to get baptized. And they're like, well, we got to do more studies. And I go, look, if you guys don't baptize me, I'm going somewhere else. And Victor's like, okay, no more sleeping around. I'm like, what? If you're telling me I can't sleep around, that's everything I know about love. He goes, no, bro, you can't come to God and get baptized and then have your sins forgiven and yet not pledge a good conscience. So I went over to this girl, Erin's house, and I was at the bottom of her apartments with my Porsche. And I was going up there, probably to sleep with her, And then all of a sudden, something lit me up. God's Spirit showed up. It made me feel like I was connected to something that was not of this world. And I didn't know really what to do with it, but all of a sudden, then it went away. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was back to normal. And then I didn't go up in that house to sleep with that girl. I left. I just always assumed God was with me because I had so much abundance of so much stuff, I mean, I had the Ferrari, the Porsche, the hot wife, the 2-story house, the kids, the beautiful backyard, the pool, residual income, and of course God's with me. I mean, right? I mean, that's what you think. And then the reality when you find out that, whoa, the real God is not with me, the ego's with me. To me, it was real because I had to die to myself. I felt like there was a fight over my soul, I was still doing wild stuff, but I was being called. Victor sat there and started reading me about how Jesus was crucified. At that point, I started understanding, it hit me. Wow, this is really a gift. So I felt like, right when Victor's like, are you ready? I still was like about to back out. I was like, oh my gosh, everything I knew about love is through the body. And all of a sudden, I felt like God put his hand on my heart, and I promise you, he was gonna squeeze it and burst it if I backed out after what he did and the gifts that he gave me. And right when I made that decision, Victor's like, okay, you ready? I'm like, okay, let's do it. I'm in. And all of a sudden, the hand came off my heart. And then the powers of Christ happened in the water at baptism. Because I came up and I felt like a new creation. I felt like for a moment I didn't have any sins again. When I got my soul circumcised, I had a new life. And so that whole life that I was leading before, it was in the past.
God, thank you for allowing us to...
He knew he had made poor choices, but he had such good people around him that helped him through that, and now he wanted to give back to us.
That's how you show love to God, is through your obedience. Today, I'm not a disciple because I have to be. That's the least I could do, is to use my life to stand up for Jesus Christ now. I mean, it's a privilege to be able to stand up for Jesus.
And when Johnny come to me about his change of lifestyle, he's changing everything basically, totally turned his life around. I actually remember the night he told me, because we went out for dinner and it's not something we do. He lives in Phoenix, I'm in California, and he happened to be driving by and said, hey, I want to go out for dinner, can we meet up? Yeah, no problem. Probably the first time I've ever been out for dinner. And yeah, he wanted to tell me how he's changed his life. He's very religious now and following the Bible. And we've been baptized and no more women and drugs and partying, and he's done with all that.
I love the fact that he found God. I do. I love the fact that he's spiritual.
I think he almost was punishing himself or disciplining himself, going back to God and giving up everything. And he took it this time extreme.
Are you high right now, Johnny? What's going on? This doesn't make any sense.
To me, it was a big shock, like having a dad who was a crazy partier and drinker. Like, it was something that I was like, okay, Dad, I didn't really believe him, but then as time went on, I found out that he was serious.
How can this be a bad thing? As long as he's doing good and he's trying to help others and be loving and just trying to show that, you know what, to be Christ-like.
I had treated Ladina so horribly, being caught up in so much sin in that relationship.
He never really realized that all this partying and drugs and women was a wrong thing to do. And he slowly started working it out, and you could definitely see a change in the person for sure.
It's been a good impact on him. I feel like he's done a lot of good things ever since he's become religious.
He wanted to help others.
He really started becoming a better person.
This guy's heart is finally in the right place.
I just wanted to please God in the way that I was treating Marla now. I was happy as a clam just hanging out with her. We ran off together and we felt like innocent children in our heart, even though our bodies were older. We just felt like such a new young spirit. And she's like, we could get married, you know? And I said, I'm almost 20 years old, and are you sure about me?
I tried to tell him, I don't know, I think that's kind of a big age difference. And he'd always tell me she has an old soul, which I kind of think she did to some degree. But then once things started getting a little bit more involved, I started worrying a little bit.
I'm like, can I have a week to think about it? I took off to San Diego and I hibernated there for a week. The way I was living my life, I wanted to take care of this. To me, this was a neat thing I had.
I saw both sides. I saw when he was escalated out of control.
When God called me, I broke off from the party scene, so I used to hang out with Paul all the time.
Coming from where he was, which was very rock and roll, especially in his world.
No partying, no drugs, no alcohol, no women.
But he found himself.
Paul has a love for God. I said, God put it on my heart to read you a scripture.
His faith and his belief are next to nothing.
And then I got at the Bible and I read him God's wrath on mankind.
He has a very, very strong will, and it's difficult to do what he did and what I saw.
You know, that's the type of love that I've got for people, you know, and organically, you know, your real friends, the people that you reach out to.
Many people that you tend to meet always want something from you. Johnny wants nothing. I mean, he has a good heart.
We were running around living total purity, not crossing any lines. You don't cross lines. You don't cross any lines that can trigger lust, because lust is extremely powerful. Marla and I messed around, and then we had sex. We were locked in the sinful nature all of a sudden. You know, we'd cross lines, and all of a sudden this control had a grip on my heart and soul and on hers. And then finally one day I'm like, it's over. I was like, we got to give this back to God. I ended it, and I locked into purity. I didn't cross lines anymore.
He can surround himself with assistants and surround himself with people that he thinks that are his friends. But in the end, it's just him and God. And I think that is where he's at personally in his life right now.
For him, throughout all of this, like, he would call me, I would be his support system, I think. I mean, I think, honestly, the only two people he really trusts in his life are his dad and me.
Australian Superbike star David Anthony talked to David Atlas and the AMA board. They had a meeting, and they said, sorry, it's not going to happen.
Everyone individually is telling Johnny that he's toxic. He's terrible for the business. They don't want him racing, whatever. And Johnny's listening, and, you know, Johnny being the typical Johnny that he is, he's arguing everybody's viewpoints. You're wrong. Well, you could be right. I don't think so. That never happened. I was holding my line. All of this. And then I remember them looking at me. Well, what do you think, Frank? And I kind of stood up and I did the whole clear and throw thing. And I, for some reason, put my ass on the line for Johnny. And I said, gentleman, lady, I said, put your trust in me. I was like, let him back in. I said, I will watch after him. I will make sure that he follows the rules.
They called me up and said they decided to have another meeting out of nowhere, and they reinstated you. I was like, oh man, this is exciting. I get to go back racing.
I could see a change in Johnny when that happened.
People say, oh, Johnny's at the back of the grid, you know, what's he doing out there? But, you know, there's 99.9% of people aren't going to go as quick as him on a race bike. So he's doing something right. He's obviously got that talent inside him.
Somehow I just keep holding on to the sport by a thread.
I mean, this guy literally has had it all, lost it all, had it all again. And he is unapologetic in his chase.
Yeah, Johnny's definitely getting on in age. He's not afraid to say it. He's definitely proud of the fact that he's the oldest superbike rider out there, and he's still doing it.
Maybe other people believe that they can continue racing.
Even though he's crazy and insane, he still does some pretty cool things that, I mean, I'm proud to say that that's what my dad does. And now to be racing at 46 years old, that's pretty cool.
At his age, trying to do what he's trying to do in a young man's sport. I don't know if it's throwing money away but yeah, everybody wants to achieve what they want to achieve in life.
Johnny is hands down one of the most, if not the most driven person that I know in my life.
What else is there in life to do besides superbike racing?
To be able to do that, and the courage and the guts of him just going, I'm gonna do it. What do you mean you can't do it? Why can't you do it? Sure, let's go do it.
Coming into this year, he decided he wanted to up the game and get some good equipment and really invest money in it. So that's what he did. We got some really good bikes and we built him some good stuff, and he's definitely put the effort in this year.
It's not about money. Your life can be taken at racing. You can't buy your way into the sport. You have to qualify and make it.
I've always said if we could help Johnny, or Johnny would listen, or whatever it may be, that he could take it to that next level with his riding. And this year, given that he's invested this money into what he's doing, he obviously believes in it, wants to succeed. So it's given us more of a reason to definitely help him. His new mechanic this year is made it his goal to make it so that everyone in the paddock likes Johnny and wants to see Johnny get better results.
When he gets his mind set to something, he will do it. And he will get told no 5 million times and still go back and keep trying.
When I can't get a ride anymore and I can't ride a bike anymore, and when I don't qualify, I'll stop racing. I had 3 paths to pick, and the racing path was the one that, could lead to death.
Johnny lived a good life. He did it. He's probably done everything a human being would want to do.
I always said that my drug's better than your drugs. I've come to terms that, I'll probably die racing. Perfectly fine. You guys can live to your 80 or 90 years old. I'll go out in the blaze of glory.
That guy smiles and he just lights up a room. He really does. That's where you get to see his heart. He really does enjoy life.
I can't deny the fact that he's the man that got me focused on being an entrepreneur. He showed me what it's like to be fearless.
That's what's so visceral and wonderful about Johnny Rock Page. He likes being alive. And maybe that's a bit of his narcissism or his pride, but that's awesome.
I don't live like I used to. I really have a strong path of purity, and because of that, I can lead by example now.
But he also taught me how much harder I could work, how much stronger I could be.
I feel like I've got to do things differently, in a sense, because I've got to be a warrior for God also.
He is very genuine. He's very giving. He's super loving.
I think he tightened up as a father a little bit when he became Christian.
When I wanted to give up on myself, he didn't let me give up on myself.
I think he's a great dad. I really do.
As I've gotten older, I've realized that I'm on the ultimate quest, for God's love. Love is about, sticking around when it's not convenient, Love has nothing to do with the sexual or a sensuous feeling. Wake up and be a giver in the world. Care about people. It's not convenient to care about people. If you see someone on the street that they may need some money because you think that they're in a bad situation, take out some money and give it to them. You never know. Could be an angel. Let's stride as a human race to get better. I want to see us explode, and I want to see us raised to a new height of morality, you know, where it becomes a norm. And if somebody's immoral, that's weird. If you think about the possibilities, don't sit on the couch, go for them. Live a life that's not necessarily comfortable and go after your dreams. What I want to be remembered by when I'm gone from this world is dream big. Anything is possible. And especially with God.
There were times where if I heard that sentence or that motto, I just wanted to scream. It really is the truth. And he has proven it over and over. And whatever he sets his mind to, he will do.
That's just Johnny. You know, don't judge him now.
In the craziness which was our life for a very long period of time, he showed me what it's like to love.
I'm hoping for a miracle through my life on the world stage.
There is beauty everywhere, but you've got to get out of your own way. Allow yourself the comfort of others and relish in the secret sweetness